The night she arrived, the moon bled crimson across the sky. It hung heavy over the ancient forest, casting shadows that moved like living things, breathing with the wind. The trees whispered warnings, the wolves fell silent. Even the stars seemed to dim in reverence or fear of what was to come. She rode alone through the darkness, her silver cloak trailing behind her like captured moonlight. The Mage Princess, they called her in the kingdoms of men, keeper of the lunar prophecies, guardian of the veil between worlds. But tonight she was simply a woman fleeing her destiny, or perhaps riding straight into its arms. Her horse stumbled on the forest path, sensing what she could not yet see. The air had changed, thickened. Every breath tasted of iron and ancient magic, the kind that predates kingdoms and crowns, the kind that remembers when the world was young and wild. Then she saw him. Lord Alpha stood in the center of the path like a monument carved from shadow and moonlight. Tall, impossibly still, with eyes that caught the blood moon's glow and reflected it back like twin flames. He wore no crown, needed no throne. Power radiated from him in waves that made the very air shimmer and bend. For a moment, neither moved, neither spoke. The forest held its breath. She should have been afraid. Every instinct screamed that this man, this creature, was danger incarnate. The Shadow King, the whispers named him, the one who walked between darkness and dawn, who commanded wolves and wielded ancient magic that made even the old gods nervous. But fear was not what she felt as their eyes met across that moonlit path. Recognition flooded through her like lightning, sudden and electric, as if her soul remembered something her mind had forgotten. As if every moment of her life had been leading to this one, standing in the crimson glow of a bleeding moon, facing the man who would either destroy her or save her, or perhaps both. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. His voice was deep, textured with centuries she couldn't begin to understand. These woods belonged to the darkness now. She lifted her chin, feeling her own magic rise to meet his, silver light dancing at her fingertips. "I was summoned. The moon showed me visions. A Shadow King, a blood oath, a destiny that binds us both." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or recognition of his own. He took a step closer, and she noticed how the shadows moved with him, clinging to him like faithful servants. Yet beneath that darkness, she sensed something else. Something wounded and lonely and achingly human. The prophecy, he breathed, and now she heard it, the weight of years of waiting, of hope long abandoned. "I thought it was just another cruel jest from the gods, another promise that would never come." What prophecy? Her heart hammered against her ribs, though whether from fear or anticipation, she could no longer tell. Lord Alpha's eyes never left hers as he spoke, reciting words that sounded older than memory itself. "When the moon bleeds red and silver walks the night, when shadow and light cease their endless fight, only then shall the broken king be whole. Only then shall love redeem his blackened soul." The words hung between them like a spell, shimmering with power and possibility. She dismounted slowly, her boots touching the forest floor with barely a whisper. Every logical part of her mind screamed to run, to turn back, to choose the safe path she had always known. But destiny rarely offers safe paths, and her heart, that treacherous, hopeful thing, pulled her forward. "I don't understand," she said softly, even as understanding bloomed somewhere deep inside her. "Who are you? What are you?" He moved closer still, until she could see the silver scars that crossed his neck like a collar of pain, until she could smell leather and wood smoke and something wild she had no name for. "I was a king once," he said, and his voice carried the weight of unspeakable loss, "before betrayal, before the curse. Before I became this thing that walks between worlds, neither alive nor dead, neither man nor monster." Her breath caught. The story suddenly made terrible sense. The Shadow King hadn't been born, he'd been created. Forged in betrayal and bound by dark magic to protect these lands forever, unable to die, unable to truly live. Who did this to you? His laugh was bitter as winter frost. The woman I loved, the brother I trusted. On our wedding night, they gave me poisoned wine and spoke words of binding that chained my soul to these cursed woods. They wanted my throne, my power. They got both. And I got eternity in shadows. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his face. Her palm cupped his cheek, and she felt him flinch, not from pain, but from the shock of gentle contact, perhaps the first kindness he'd known in centuries. How long? She whispered. 300 years. 300 years of darkness. 300 blood moons come and gone, each one mocking me with the prophecy's promise, until tonight. Until you, the way he said you made something inside her chest crack open. His hand rose to cover hers where it rested against his face, and his touch was surprisingly warm, surprisingly real. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. I'm so sorry they hurt you like that. His eyes closed briefly, as if her compassion caused him pain. When they opened again, they burned with an intensity that stole her breath. Why did you come here? Why answer the moon's call? She thought of her own reasons. The arranged marriage waiting in the southern kingdoms. The life of political duty and magical servitude that had been chosen for her before she could even speak. The cage that looked like a palace, a prison that wore a crown. Because I was running from my own destiny, she admitted. Or so I thought. Now I wonder if I was really running toward it all along. Something shifted between them in that moment. The air warmed. The blood moon seemed to pulse overhead, casting them in shades of crimson and silver, shadow and light. Two souls escaping their separate hells, meeting in the darkness, finding in each other a possibility neither had dared to dream. Will you help me? He asked, and the vulnerability in those words nearly broke her. Here stood a man of unimaginable power, asking for help with the tentative hope of someone who had been disappointed too many times before. Help you how? Break the curse. The prophecy says only love between shadow and light can shatter the binding. But I have to warn you. His grip on her hand tightened slightly. This path won't be easy. The magic that chains me is ancient and cruel. It will test us, hurt us, try to tear us apart in every way possible. She should have pulled away, should have climbed back on her horse and ridden hard towards civilization and safety and the life that was waiting for her. Instead, she stepped closer until their foreheads nearly touched, until his breath mingled with hers in the crimson darkness. Tell me what to do. Relief flooded his features, quickly followed by something that looked dangerously like hope. Stay with me. Let me show you who I really am beneath this curse. And in time, if your heart can truly see mine ... perhaps we can find the key to breaking these chains. And if I can't break it, if the prophecy is wrong, his smile was sad and infinitely tender. Then at least I will have known, for however brief a time, what it feels like to be seen again, to be treated as a man instead of a monster. That alone would be worth more than you know. If this moment touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It helps us bring more stories like this one. So she stayed. He led her deeper into the forest, to a castle she hadn't known existed. It rose from the darkness like a memory made of stone, ancient and beautiful, and wrapped in enchantments that made it invisible to mortal eyes. Inside, she found rooms filled with moonlight and mystery, libraries that held the wisdom of ages, gardens where silver flowers bloomed even in the shadow. He gave her the tower room that faced east, where the sunrise would eventually find her, a room untouched by his curse, where light could still live freely. You're not a prisoner here, he told her that first night. standing in the doorway of her chamber like a shadow reluctant to cross into light. You can leave whenever you wish. I won't stop you, but she didn't leave. The days that followed were strange and wonderful. Lord Alpha showed her his world with the careful attention of someone sharing something precious and fragile. He walked with her through the enchanted forest, teaching her the language of the wolves, showing her how the trees communicated through roots that ran deeper than kingdoms. His darkness no longer seemed frightening, but rather like a cloak that had been forced upon him, something he wore out of necessity rather than choice. She discovered he was nothing like the monster the stories painted. He was thoughtful and curious, asking her questions about the world beyond his cursed woods with an eagerness that reminded her he had once been fully human. He played chess with a strategic mind that could plan 100 moves ahead. He read poetry by moonlight in languages so old they made her magic shiver with recognition. He laughed rarely, but when he did, it transformed his entire face into something breathtaking. And she noticed things about him that made her heart ache. The way he stood just outside the reach of sunlight that managed to penetrate the forest canopy, as if afraid it might burn him. How he never looked at his own reflection, avoiding mirrors like they were enemies. The careful distance he maintained, as if proximity to her might somehow taint or harm her. "You don't have to stay so far away," she told him one evening as they sat by a fire in his great hall. "I'm not afraid of you. You should be." But even as he said it, he moved closer, settling beside her with the tentative movements of someone expecting rejection. "The curse doesn't just bind me to these lands. It feeds on darkness, on isolation. Sometimes I fear it's eaten away so much of my humanity that there's nothing left worth saving." She turned to face him fully, seeing past the shadows and scars to the man underneath. "I don't believe that. A monster wouldn't have given me the East Tower where the light lives. Wouldn't have asked before touching. Wouldn't recite poetry to the moon when he thinks no one is listening." He looked startled, almost embarrassed. "You heard that?" "I hear many things. The castle speaks to me in its way. It misses what it used to be. It misses you being fully alive in it." His hand found hers in the firelight, and this time he didn't flinch from the contact. His fingers intertwined with hers, rough and warm and real. "I've forgotten what that feels like. Being fully alive." "Then let me remind you," she whispered. She taught him her magic, the lunar spells that painted silver light from her palms. He watched with wonder as she made moonflowers bloom out of season, as she called down starlight to dance in the darkened halls. In turn, he showed her his own power, the shadow magic that could bend and shape darkness into anything he imagined. Together, they created art from opposing forces, light and shadow weaving together into something entirely new. The weeks turned into months, and something grew between them that neither had planned for. It started with lingering glances that lasted a heartbeat too long. Touches that began as accident and ended as intention. Conversations that stretched until dawn, neither willing to be the first to say goodnight. She found herself thinking about him constantly. The way his eyes caught light. How his rare smile felt like sunrise breaking. The gentle strength in his hands when he helped her over difficult paths. The sound of his voice when he said her name, like it was something holy he was learning to pray. And he was falling just as hard. She saw it in how he brought her flowers from the deepest, most secret parts of the forest. How he cleared the northern tower just so she could have a better view of the stars. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 300 years. One night, under a moon that was nearly full and bright as silver, they walked together through his garden of nocturnal blooms. The air was heavy with the scent of night jasmine and magic. Neither had spoken for some time, content in the comfortable silence they'd built between them. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. stopping beside a fountain where crystal clear water sparkled with reflected starlight. She turned to him, seeing something in his face that made her pulse quicken: vulnerability, hope, fear. 300 years, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. 300 years of darkness and isolation and believing I was beyond redemption. Then you appeared like moonlight made flesh, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to hope, to want, to double quote. He paused, swallowing hard. To love. Her heart stopped, then started again, twice as fast. You've awakened something in me I thought was dead, he said, stepping closer. Something human and desperate and terrifying. I know I have no right to these feelings. I know you came here seeking freedom, not another cage, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't stand beside you and pretend my heart doesn't call out your name with every beat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the overwhelming surge of her own emotions rising to meet his. I love you, he said simply. Finally, the words falling between them like a sacred vow. I love your strength and your kindness. The way you see beauty in broken things. How you make light dance like it's laughing. I love the sound of your voice reading ancient texts. The way you argue with me about poetry and magic and the nature of destiny. I love that you stayed when you could have run. That you looked at a monster and saw a man. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and real, and completely beyond her control. Say something, he whispered, and she heard the fear underneath. The bracing for rejection, the expectation of loss that had been carved into him over centuries of disappointment. You're not a monster, she said, her voice shaking with the force of her feelings. You never were. And I didn't stay because of a prophecy or a curse or a destiny. She reached up, framing his face with both her hands, making him look at her, really look. I stayed because of you. Because somewhere between the blood moon and tonight, I fell completely, irrevocably, impossibly in love with you. The sound he made was half sob, half laugh, all relief. His hands came up to cover hers, holding them against his face like they were precious and fragile. Say it again. I love you, she repeated, and it felt like the truest thing she'd ever spoken. I love your gentleness and your strength, the way you protect these woods and everything in them. How you've survived 300 years of darkness without letting it turn your heart to stone. I love your mind and your magic and the sound of your laugh when I finally coax it out of you. I love who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming. All of it, all of you. He kissed her then, and the world tilted on its axis. His lips were soft and careful at first, asking permission even as she'd already granted it. She responded by pulling him closer, deepening the kiss, pouring 3 months of longing and hope and love into the contact. He tasted like midnight and magic and promises. His hands slid into her hair, cradling her head like she was something precious he was afraid to break. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, both trembling, the garden around them had changed. The flowers bloomed brighter, the starlight seemed warmer. Even the shadows appeared softer, less threatening, as if they too were responding to the shift in their master's heart. Is this real? He asked, his forehead resting against hers. Please tell me this is real and not another cruel dream. It's real, she promised. I'm real. This is real. They stood there holding each other as the moon traveled across the sky, neither willing to let go, both afraid that if they did, the moment might dissolve like mist. The months that followed were the happiest either had ever known. They were inseparable, exploring the depths of both the enchanted forest and their feelings for each other. She moved from the east tower to his chambers, and together they brought light back into rooms that had known only darkness for centuries. The castle itself seemed to awaken, as if their love was breathing life back into its ancient stones. They made love under starlight and moonbeams, discovering each other with reverence and passion. His touch was both gentle and consuming, worshipping every inch of her skin like she was a goddess made flesh. She traced the scars on his body with her fingers and her lips, loving away the pain they represented, showing him without words that his wounds made him no less beautiful in her eyes. During the day, they worked together studying the curse, searching through his vast library for the key to breaking it. Ancient texts and prophecies spread across tables as they pieced together clues. The magic that bound him was complex, woven from betrayal and blood and spoken during a lunar eclipse. To break it required not just love, but sacrifice, trust, and a willingness to face the darkness within. "We're close," she said one evening, looking up from a particularly old tome. "I can feel it. The answer is here somewhere." He pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck in a way that made her completely lose her train of thought. "You've already given me more than I ever dreamed possible. Even if we never break the curse, even if I'm bound to these woods forever as long as you're with me, I'm free where it matters most." She turned in his arms, serious now. "But don't you want to truly be free? To walk in sunlight again? To leave these woods and see the world beyond?" Something shadowed his expression. "I want that more than you know. But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That breaking the curse might break us too. That I might lose you in the process. The prophecy speaks of sacrifice, and I fear what that might mean." She kissed him softly, trying to pour reassurance into the contact. "We'll face it together. Whatever comes, we face it together." He held her tighter, and neither noticed the shadows in the corners of the room growing longer, darker, more alive with malicious intent. "Tell me in the comments what part of their story moved you the most. Your words mean more than you know." The night everything changed began like any other. They were in his study, surrounded by books and moonlight, when she finally found it. The ritual that could break his curse. Her hands shook as she read the ancient words, understanding slowly dawning with each line. "What is it?" Lord Alpha asked, seeing her face pale. "What's wrong?" "The sacrifice," she whispered. "I understand now what it means." He took the book from her trembling hands, reading the passage himself. His expression went from confusion to horror to determination in the span of a heartbeat. "No," he said firmly. "Absolutely not. We'll find another way. There's no other way." Her voice was steady even though her heart was breaking. The curse was born from betrayal and death. It can only be broken by love and life freely given. On the next blood moon, one of us must willingly offer our life force to shatter the binding. The other will be freed you from your curse, me from my magical bonds to my kingdom. Then I'll be the one to... "You can't," she interrupted gently. "You're already bound. It has to be me. My life, freely given out of love, can break both our chains." He pulled her into his arms, so tightly she could barely breathe, his whole body shaking. "I won't let you. Do you hear me? I won't let you die for me. I've lived 300 years in darkness. I can live 300 more if it means you stay alive, but you won't truly be living," she argued, pulling back to look at him. "You'll be existing, surviving, and I'll be sent back to my kingdom, married off to a stranger, using my magic to serve political ends I don't believe in. Is that the life you want for me? I want you alive." His voice broke on the words. "I want you breathing and laughing and dancing under the moonlight. I want you to have every chance at happiness, even if it's not with me." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't you understand? You are my happiness. You are my chance. And if I can give you true freedom, true life, even if I'm not there to see you live it, that's worth everything to me." They argued through the night, neither willing to concede. She insisted it was her choice to make. He swore he'd find another solution. They loved each other too much to agree, too deeply to let go. But the blood moon was coming, inevitable as destiny. The days leading up to it were bittersweet agony. They held each other more desperately, memorizing the feel of skin against skin, the sound of heartbeats and whispered words. They made love like it might be their last time, pouring everything they had into each touch, each kiss, each desperate declaration of love. "Come away with me," he begged on one of those final nights, holding her close in the darkness. "We'll run, hide, find some corner of the world where neither curse nor duty can find us." "You know we can't," she whispered against his chest. "The magic would find us, the prophecy would follow, and you'd never be free." "I don't care about being free if I'm free of you," he said fiercely. "Don't you see? You've become my world, my light, my reason for everything. Losing you would be a curse worse than any magic could devise." She had no answer to that except to hold him tighter and cry into his shoulder, letting him feel her tears, her fear, her unwavering love. On the night before the blood moon, something shifted in the castle. The shadows grew restless, whispering in voices that set their teeth on edge. Lord Alpha felt it first, a presence that shouldn't be there, a familiar malice that made his blood run cold. "Something's wrong," he said, pulling away from their dinner. "The wards have been breached." Before she could respond, the great hall doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris walked a woman whose beauty was as cold and perfect as winter frost. Behind her, a man who bore such striking resemblance to Lord Alpha that he could only be one person. "Brother," the man said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's been too long." "Bastion," Lord Alpha's voice was pure ice. "Morgana, how did you get through my protections?" The woman Morgana laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Did you really think we weren't watching? Waiting? When we heard about your little prophecy coming true, about your pet mage trying to break our beautiful curse, we simply had to intervene." The Mage Princess stepped forward, her magic already crackling at her fingertips. "You're the ones who did this to him, who bound him here for 3 centuries. Guilty as charged," Bastion said cheerfully. "And we've quite enjoyed ruling his kingdom in his absence. We're not about to let you undo our handiwork now. You can't stop us." Lord Alpha growled, shadows beginning to swirl around him in response to his rage. "The ritual can't be prevented. The blood moon rises tomorrow." "Oh, we know," Morgana purred. "That's why we're here. You see, the prophecy has a loophole. A delicious little caveat you clearly didn't read carefully enough." She pulled out a scroll, ancient and crackling with dark energy. "The sacrifice must be made willingly, yes. But only if the one sacrificing truly believes they're saving their beloved. If there's doubt, even the tiniest speck of doubt about whether their death will actually work, the ritual fails. And the curse doesn't just remain ... it doubles. Binds you both, forever." Horror crept through the Mage Princess's veins. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Morgana continued, moving closer with predatory grace, "that we're going to plant that doubt. We're going to make sure that when you stand before the blood moon tomorrow night, you won't be certain. You'll wonder if this is really the way. If maybe there was another solution you missed. If perhaps your death would be meaningless after all. It won't work," the Mage Princess said, but her voice shook slightly. "Our love is stronger than your poison." Bastion laughed. "Love? Please, love is just pretty words and temporary feelings. Let me tell you what really happened 300 years ago. Let me tell you the truth about your precious Shadow King." "Don't listen to them," Lord Alpha said urgently, reaching for her. "Whatever they say, it's lies designed to hurt us." But Morgana was already speaking, her voice weaving magic that forced them to listen, to hear, to doubt. "Your beloved didn't just have his throne stolen," she said. "He gave it away, willingly. You see, before I cursed him, I offered him a choice. I told him I'd discovered a spell of immortality, a way to live forever and rule eternally. All he had to do was sacrifice something precious: his humanity, his ability to love, his connection to everything that made him weak. That's not true, Lord Alpha said, but something in his voice wavered. Isn't it? Bastion challenged. Tell her, brother. Tell her how you jumped at the chance. How you were so eager for power, for eternal rule, that you didn't even hesitate. The curse wasn't punishment, it was a deal gone wrong. You wanted to become something beyond human, and we gave you exactly that. The fact that it trapped you here instead of making you all-powerful, well, that's just our little twist on your wish. The Mage Princess looked at Lord Alpha, searching his face. Tell me they're lying. He opened his mouth, closed it, agony written across his features. I did make a choice that night, but not the one they're describing. I chose love. I chose to trust Morgana when she said she loved me, to believe in Bastion when he swore brotherhood. And that trust, that love, was used as the weapon to bind me. My hurt was the lock. Their betrayal was the key. Are you sure? Morgana whispered, her magic making the words echo and twist. Are you absolutely certain? Or has 300 years of darkness confused your memories, made you forget who you really were? The ambitious king who wanted power above all else? Stop it. The Mage Princess cried, silver light flaring from her hands. Get out of his head. But the damage was creeping in, insidious as smoke. She could see it in Lord Alpha's eyes, not guilt exactly, but uncertainty. 300 years of isolation, questioning his own memories, his own truth. And you, Bastion turned to her now, are you truly willing to die for him? For someone you've known only months? Someone who might not even be who you think he is? What if his curse can't be broken? What if your sacrifice is meaningless? What if you die and he remains trapped and you've thrown away your life for nothing? I know who he is, she said fiercely. I know his heart. Do you? Morgana challenged. Or do you know who he's shown you? A lonely king desperate for companionship, willing to play whatever role necessary to keep you here? Has he even told you everything about his past? About the wars he waged, the enemies he crushed, the darkness he embraced long before we ever cursed him? The Mage Princess's hands trembled. Not because she believed them, she didn't, not really, but because a tiny, insidious seed of doubt had been planted. What if she was wrong? What if the ritual failed? What if her death meant nothing? Lord Alpha saw it happening, saw her confidence wavering, and felt his own certainty crumble in response. What if they were right? What if his memories were twisted by centuries of darkness? What if letting her sacrifice herself was just another form of his old ambition, using someone he claimed to love for his own gain? Get out, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Get out before I forget every vow I made about not killing. Morgana and Bastion smiled, victorious. They'd accomplished exactly what they came for. They vanished in a swirl of black smoke, leaving behind only poison and doubt. In the silence that followed, Lord Alpha and the Mage Princess stood facing each other across an suddenly impossible distance. Tell me it's not true, she whispered. Tell me you never wanted power more than love. Double quote he struggled with, words that wouldn't come. I don't know anymore. 300 years is a long time. Maybe I've forgotten who I was. Maybe they're right and I'm remembering it wrong. That's the curse talking, she said desperately. That's their magic making you doubt yourself. Or maybe, he said slowly, painfully, maybe I've been lying to myself all along. Maybe I let you stay here because I was selfish. Because I wanted you regardless of the cost. What if tomorrow you die and it's all for nothing? What if I'm the monster everyone says I am? She moved toward him, but he stepped back, and that retreat felt like a chasm opening between them. Don't, he said. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. I'm not worth it. I never was. You don't mean that, she said, tears flowing freely now. This is exactly what they wanted. To make us doubt, to make us question everything. Maybe we should question it, he argued, his own pain making him cruel. Maybe you should go back to your kingdom, marry your prince, live a long, safe life instead of throwing it away on a cursed king who can't even remember if he deserves saving. I love you, she said desperately. Love isn't enough, he replied, and the words shattered something between them. Not if I don't even know who I am. Not if my past is so dark that even I can't face it. She stood there, heartbreaking, watching the man she loved disappear behind walls of doubt and self-loathing. The poison had worked perfectly. They both still loved each other desperately, but love wrapped in uncertainty is paralyzed, unable to move forward or let go. Tomorrow is the blood moon, she said quietly. I'll perform the ritual with or without your blessing. Then you'll do it alone, he said, turning away. I won't watch you die for nothing. He left her standing in the ruined hall, shadows swallowing him whole. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she climbed to the highest tower and stared at the moon, watching it wane toward its crimson rebirth. Her magic churned inside her, confused and turbulent. The ritual required absolute certainty, complete willingness, unshakable faith. And Morgana's poison had infected all three. What if she was wrong? What if her sacrifice meant nothing? What if Lord Alpha truly was the power-hungry king they'd described, and 300 years hadn't changed him at all? But then she remembered his gentle hands teaching her shadow magic, his rare, beautiful smile. The way he recited poetry to flowers he thought no one knew he was caring for. The tears on his face when he'd first said he loved her. The careful distance he'd maintained until she invited him closer. That wasn't the behavior of a monster. That was the behavior of a man terrified of becoming one. As the sun rose on the final day, she made her decision. She would perform the ritual regardless of her doubts. Because even uncertainty in service of love was better than certainty in service of fear. Lord Alpha spent the day in the deepest, darkest part of his castle, surrounded by shadows that whispered encouragement to his worst fears. He tortured himself with memories, trying to separate truth from lies, failing at every turn. Had he wanted power? Yes. Had he been ambitious? Undeniably. Did that make him the monster Morgana claimed? He no longer knew. But he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He couldn't watch her die. Couldn't stand there while she offered her life for his freedom. If the ritual failed, if she died and he remained cursed, it would destroy him more completely than 3 centuries of darkness ever had. So when the blood moon began to rise, painting the world in shades of crimson, he made his own choice. He would stop her, hold her back, even if she hated him for it. Even if it meant staying cursed forever, her life mattered more than his freedom. She stood in the center of the ritual circle she'd drawn in the castle courtyard, silver robes flowing around her like captured moonlight. The blood moon hung overhead, huge and terrible and beautiful. Her magic responded to it, singing in her veins, ready for the sacrifice. She heard him before she saw him, shadows announcing his presence. Don't do this, Lord Alpha said, stepping into the courtyard. Please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I have to, she replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. It's the only way. What if they're right? He asked desperately. What if I'm not worth saving? What if your death means nothing? She turned to face him fully, letting him see everything she felt written across her features. Then at least I'll die knowing I loved completely. That I gave everything for someone I believed in. Can you say the same? Can you honestly tell me that living in fear and doubt is better than taking this chance? I can't lose you, he said brokenly. Don't make me lose you. You're losing me right now, she countered. With every moment you let their poison win. With every second you choose fear over faith, I love you. I believe in you. I believe in us. Even if you don't anymore. The blood moon reached its zenith, and the magic began to pulse and pull. It was time. I'm going to start the ritual, she said. You can either stand there and watch, or you can join me, but you can't stop me. This is my choice, my life, my love to give. She raised her hands, and silver light exploded from her palms. Ancient words poured from her lips, words older than kingdoms, older than curses, old as love itself. The magic wrapped around her, lifting her hair, making her skin glow with lunar radiance. Lord Alpha watched, paralyzed by fear and love and desperate hope. She was magnificent, powerful, everything light and good in the world, and she was offering it all for him. In that moment, watching her willingly give herself to save him, something inside him finally truly broke. All the walls of doubt, all the poison of Morgana's words, all the fear and self-loathing, it all shattered like glass meeting stone. He remembered. Not what Morgana had twisted, but the truth. He remembered being young and idealistic, wanting to be a king who ruled with love instead of fear. He remembered rejecting dark magic, choosing the harder path of justice and compassion. He remembered trusting the wrong people, not because he was power-hungry, but because he'd been naive enough to believe that everyone's heart was as honest as his own. The curse hadn't been his choice. It had been his punishment for daring to be good in a world that rewarded cruelty. And this woman, this impossibly brave, impossibly loving woman, was about to die to prove what he should have known all along, that he was worthy, that he was loved. That redemption was possible even after 300 years of darkness. No, he said, and the word came out like thunder. He ran toward her, shadows and light exploding around him in equal measure. The magic of the ritual had already begun, pulling at her life force, drawing it out in streams of silver that flowed toward the blood moon overhead. She was glowing, transcendent, and fading all at once. "Stop," he shouted, crashing into the ritual circle. The magic fought him, burning his skin where shadow met light, but he didn't care. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms, even as the spell tried to tear them apart. "What are you doing?" she gasped, her eyes wide with shock and growing weakness. "You'll ruin everything." "No," he said fiercely, holding her tighter. "I'll fix everything. I understand now." I finally understand. The ritual magic swirled around them both, confused by his presence, by the shadow mixing with the light. It should have failed, should have collapsed. But something else was happening instead. "The sacrifice," he said urgently, looking into her eyes as life continued to pour out of her. "It doesn't have to be death. It has to be life freely given. You were giving your life by ending it? But what if we both gave our lives by joining them? Completely, irrevocably, forever." Her eyes widened with understanding. "A soul bond. Yes," he breathed. "Bind your life to mine. Let your light merge with my shadow. Not sacrifice transformation, two becoming one. If the curse can't exist without darkness, then we fill that darkness with so much light it has nowhere left to hide. It could kill us both," she whispered. "Or it could save us both," he countered. "Either way, we do it together. No more sacrifices. No more one of us suffering alone. Together. Always together." She smiled through her tears, and in that smile he saw her answer. "Together." They kissed as the ritual magic reached its crescendo, and the moment their lips met, everything exploded into pure, blinding power. Silver and shadow, light and dark, two souls crashing together like stars colliding. The magic tore through them, remaking them, breaking down every barrier and rebuilding something entirely new. Lord Alpha felt her pour into him her compassion, her strength, her unwavering faith. She felt him flood through her, his loyalty, his determination, his capacity for endless love. They were no longer two separate beings. They were one consciousness inhabiting two forms, connected so deeply that neither could say where one ended and the other began. The curse screamed as it died. It couldn't survive what they'd become. There was no longer darkness to bind, no shadow to chain. Only light and shadow dancing together, balanced, complete, whole. The blood moon pulsed overhead one final time, then returned to silver. The explosion of magic that followed lit up the entire forest, visible for miles. Every creature, every tree, every stone felt the shift as ancient chains shattered and fell away like dust. When the light finally faded, they lay tangled together in the center of the circle, breathing hard, hearts beating in perfect synchronization. Lord Alpha opened his eyes and saw the world in color for the first time in 300 years. The sunrise, he could feel the sunrise coming, could sense its warmth without fear or pain. Did it work? She whispered, her voice weak but alive, so wonderfully alive. He looked down at his hands. The shadows still responded to his call, but they no longer felt like chains. They felt like tools, like extensions of his will rather than his prison. And beneath his skin, silver light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat her light, now part of him forever. It worked, he said, laughing through tears of relief and joy. We're free. We're both free. She sat up slowly, testing her body, her magic. Everything felt different, stronger. The lunar power still sang in her veins, but now it was woven through with shadows that made it deeper, richer, more complex. She could feel him inside her mind, his thoughts, his emotions, his presence like a constant warmth in her chest. I can feel you, she said in wonder. Everything you're feeling, everything you're thinking, and I can feel you, he replied, touching her face with reverent fingers. Your joy, your relief, your love. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. So much love. They helped each other stand, both swaying slightly from magical exhaustion, but unable to stop smiling. The castle around them was changing too. The shadows that had clung to every corner were receding, allowing light to penetrate freely. Flowers were blooming in cracks in the stone. Birds were singing. Life was returning after 3 centuries of frozen time. What happens now? She asked, leaning into his embrace. He held her close, marveling at the fact that he could. That he was free to love her openly, to hold her in sunlight, to plan a future instead of merely surviving in an eternal present. Now, he said slowly, we live, truly live, we rebuild. We explore the world together. We find out who we are as this new thing we've become. He pulled back slightly to look at her. We get married if you'll have me. Though I should warn you, I have no kingdom anymore, no crown, no throne. She laughed, the sound like music. I don't want a king. I just want you. The man who recites poetry to flowers, who taught me shadow magic, who was brave enough to love me even when he'd forgotten how to love himself. Then you'll marry me? Hope bloomed across his features, vulnerable and beautiful. On one condition, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief and love. We do it here, in this forest, under the moon, surrounded by all the darkness and light we've learned to balance. I can agree to those terms, he said, pulling her into another kiss. They were married 3 days later, under a moon that shone silver and clear. The forest itself seemed to celebrate, with flowers blooming out of season and wolves singing harmonies to their vows. She wore a gown that seemed woven from moonlight and shadow. He wore his scars openly, no longer hiding what he'd survived. Their vows were simple but profound. I promise to be your light when darkness comes, she said. I promise to be your shelter when the storms arrive, he replied. I promise to love every version of you, past, present, and future. I promise to choose you every day in every way, for as long as we both shall live, and even after, they said together, because stuff felt very far away for two souls bound as tightly as theirs. If you believe love can conquer destiny, tap that like button and join our family beneath the moonlight. The months following their wedding were filled with discovery and joy. They traveled together, Lord Alpha seeing the world beyond his forest for the first time in 300 years. Everything amazed him, the bustle of cities, the vastness of the ocean, the warmth of summer sun on his skin without pain or fear. She watched him experience it all with a heart so full it sometimes hurt. This was what freedom looked like. This was what love could do, not just break curses, but rebuild lives, restore hope, prove that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. But their story wasn't without challenges. Bastion and Morgana hadn't disappeared. They still held the kingdom Lord Alpha had once ruled, and they weren't about to give it up without a fight. "We should just let them have it," Lord Alpha said one evening as they discussed the future. "I don't need a throne. I have everything I want right here. But your people deserve better," she countered gently. "They've been suffering under corrupt rule for 300 years. We have the power to help them now. The question is, do we have the responsibility?" It was a question that kept them awake many nights. They'd fought so hard for their own freedom. Did they owe it to others to fight for theirs as well? The answer came from an unexpected source. A delegation from his old kingdom found them, led by an elderly woman who remembered the true king, who had been a child when he'd been cursed. "Please," she begged, kneeling before them despite their protests. "Come back, save us. We've waited so long for you to return. The prophecy said you would break your chains and bring the dawn. We need that dawn, my lord," desperately. Lord Alpha looked at his wife, their soul bond allowing silent communication in a glance. She squeezed his hand, her support absolute. "We'll help," he said finally, "but I won't be the kind of king who rules from a throne. I'll be the kind who serves his people, who remembers what it's like to be powerless and uses his power to protect rather than control." And so they returned, not with an army, but with magic and determination, and a love so powerful it had already conquered the impossible once. The confrontation with Morgana and Bastion was inevitable. It came on another blood moon fate apparently had a sense of irony. They met in the throne room where it had all begun 3 centuries before, where a young king had trusted the wrong people and paid the price. "Come to reclaim your crown?" Bastion mocked from the throne. "You're too late. This kingdom is ours. Its people are ours. You're just a ghost from a dead past." "I'm not here for a crown," Lord Alpha said calmly. "I'm here to free people from tyrants who feed on their suffering." Morgana laughed, her power crackling in the air. "You think you can defeat us? We made you. We can unmake you just as easily." "You didn't make me," he replied. "You tried to break me. There's a difference. And I'm not the same man you cursed 300 years ago. I'm stronger now." "We both are." He reached for his wife's hand, and their combined magic erupted through the throne room. Silver and shadow, light and dark, perfectly balanced, perfectly controlled. It was beautiful and terrifying, the visual representation of 2 souls in complete harmony. Morgana and Bastion fought back with everything they had. Dark magic, curses, spells designed to kill or maim or destroy, but they'd made a critical error. They'd spent 300 years believing power came from domination, from taking, from hoarding. They'd never understood that true power comes from connection, from giving, from love. The battle raged through the night, shaking the very foundations of the castle. But in the end, love proved stronger than hatred. Connection proved stronger than isolation. 2 souls bound together proved stronger than 2 hearts consumed by greed. When dawn broke over the kingdom, Morgana and Bastion were gone, not killed. Because Lord Alpha refused to become what they tried to make him, but stripped of their stolen magic and banished to live as ordinary mortals, forced to face the consequences of their choices without power to hide behind. The throne room lay in ruins, but the people were free. Lord Alpha stood among the rubble, his wife beside him, and addressed the crowd that had gathered. "I was your king once," he said. "I failed you by being too trusting, too naive. I let darkness rule for 300 years because I wasn't strong enough to stop it." He paused, looking at the faces staring up at him with hope and fear and desperate need. "I can't promise to be perfect now, but I can promise to serve you with everything I have, to rule with compassion and justice, to remember what it's like to suffer and ensure no one under my protection suffers needlessly again." "We don't need promises," the old woman who'd found them called out. "We need you, the true king, the one who broke his curse with love and came back to save us. That's the king we've been waiting for." And so, somewhat reluctantly, they took up the responsibility of leadership, but they did it their way. They rebuilt the kingdom not as rulers above their people, but as servants among them. They used their magic to heal, to protect, to nurture rather than control. She established schools where magic was taught to everyone, not hoarded by the elite. He created laws that protected the vulnerable, that gave voice to the voiceless. Together, they proved that power could be used for good, that darkness and light could coexist in balance, that love was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Years passed, the kingdom flourished. Children who'd been born under Morgana and Bastion's rule grew up knowing freedom and safety. Songs were written about the Shadow King and his Lunar Queen, the couple who'd loved each other so much they transformed the world around them. But the story they treasured most wasn't written in any book or sung in any ballad. It was the quiet moments, the mornings waking up tangled together, still marveling that they were free to do so. The evenings walking through their forest, watching their shadows and light play together on the ground. The nights making love under the moon that had witnessed their beginning. The soul bond they'd forged in that desperate ritual had only grown stronger with time. They could feel each other constantly, not intrusively, but like a warm presence in the back of their minds. A constant reminder that they were never alone. When one hurt, the other felt it. When one rejoiced, the other shared it. They were two halves of a whole, individual but inseparable. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him one evening as they stood on the castle balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "The bond? Being tied to me so completely?" He turned to her, pulling her into his arms, and she felt his answer through their connection before he even spoke it. "Regret?" he murmured against her hair. "Loving you is the only thing in my entire existence, all 300 years of it, that I've never questioned, never doubted, never regretted even for a moment. You are the best decision I've ever made, the best thing that's ever happened to me. If I could go back and choose again, I'd choose you faster. I'd choose you harder. I'd choose you every single time." She pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat against hers, perfectly synchronized as always. "Even though I doubted, even though Morgana's poison almost worked, especially because you doubted," he said firmly, "you had every reason to question everything and you chose faith anyway. You chose love anyway. You chose me when I couldn't even choose myself. That's not weakness. That's the bravest thing I've ever witnessed." They stood there as the sun set and the moon rose, light and shadow dancing together like they always would. The years continued to pass. They faced challenges as all rulers do political intrigue, natural disasters, the occasional attempt by Morgana and Bastion's loyalists to reclaim power. But they faced everything together, their bond making them stronger than any force that came against them. They had children, eventually twins, born under a blood moon, as fate apparently still enjoyed its symbolism. A boy with his father's shadows and his mother's silver eyes. A girl with her mother's light and her father's fierce protectiveness. Both carrying magic that was neither purely lunar nor shadow, but something entirely new, something balanced. Watching Lord Alpha with their children broke her heart and rebuilt it all at once. He was so gentle with them, so patient, determined to give them the childhood he'd never had. He taught them that power was responsibility, that magic was service, that love was the strongest force in the universe. "You're a good father," she told him one night after they'd finally gotten both children to sleep. He smiled, pulling her close. "I learned from the best teacher. I didn't teach you that." "Yes, you did. You taught me what love looks like in action, how to be selfless, how to put someone else's needs above my own, how to be vulnerable without being weak." He kissed her forehead tenderly. "Everything good in me exists because you believed it was there." She felt tears prick her eyes, even after all these years, still overwhelmed by the depth of his love. "And everything strong in me exists because you showed me that choosing love over fear is possible, that taking chances is worth it, that happy endings aren't just for fairy tales." Their children grew, strong and balanced, loved beyond measure. The kingdom prospered. The forest remained wild and magical, a place where shadow and light danced together in eternal harmony. The legend of the Shadow King and the Lunar Queen became the story parents told their children, not as a warning, but as proof that love could conquer anything. Decades passed, then centuries, because the ritual that had bound their souls had done something else too. It had made them something beyond mortal. Not immortal in the lonely way Lord Alpha had been cursed to be, but long-lived in a way that allowed them to watch their kingdom grow and change and flourish through generations. They watched their children have children, and those children have children. They saw the kingdom expand and evolve. They witnessed magic become something ordinary, accessible, no longer feared but celebrated. They proved that power in the right hands could heal rather than harm. But more than anything, they loved each other. Through every season, every challenge, every joy and sorrow, the passion never faded. The connection never weakened. If anything, it grew deeper, richer, more complex with each passing year. "When I was cursed," Lord Alpha said one night centuries after that first blood moon meeting, "I used to count the years. 300 seemed like an eternity, an unbearable weight. But with you, I've lost count. And I don't care. 1,000 years with you would feel like a moment. 10,000 would still be too few." She touched his face, still finding new details to love even after all this time. "When I was running from my old kingdom, I thought I was fleeing toward freedom. I didn't realize I was actually running toward you, toward home, toward everything I'd ever needed without knowing I needed it." They kissed under the moonlight. The same moon that had witnessed their beginning, their transformation, every moment of their extraordinarily ordinary life together. And the moon, if it could speak, would tell you this: true love doesn't conquer destiny. True love becomes destiny. It transforms curse into blessing, sacrifice into triumph, separation into unbreakable union. The Shadow King claimed the Lunar Princess under a blood moon. But what the prophecy never mentioned, what no prophecy could have predicted, was that she claimed him right back. And in claiming each other, they freed themselves. In loving each other, they transformed not just their own fates, but the fate of everyone who witnessed their love and dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings were possible after all. Their story has no ending because love, like theirs, doesn't end. It evolves. It grows. It continues in the children they raised, the kingdom they nurtured, the balance they brought to a world that had forgotten how light and shadow could coexist in harmony. Some nights, if you walk through the ancient forest where it all began, you can still feel them there. not as ghosts, but as presences woven into the very fabric of the land. The way moonlight filters through shadow, the way darkness makes light seem brighter, the way two opposing forces can come together and create something more beautiful than either could be alone. That's their legacy. That's their truth. Love is not the absence of darkness. Love is the light that dances with darkness, that sees it and understands it and chooses connection anyway. Love is the shadow that shelters the light, protects it, gives it depth and meaning. Love is two souls looking at each other across an impossible distance and deciding that impossible doesn't mean unachievable. It just means worth fighting for. The Shadow King claimed the Lunar Princess under a blood moon, but the real magic wasn't in the claiming. It was in the choice they both made afterward, to trust, to hope, to believe that even curses can be broken when two hearts beat as one. And they lived not happily ever after in some perfect, uncomplicated way, but fully, deeply, truly. With all the mess and beauty and challenge that comes with real love. With all the growth and change and evolution that happens when two souls commit to walking through life hand in hand, shadow and light, forever intertwined. That's the story. That's the truth. And somewhere under that same blood moon that started it all, they're still dancing, still loving, still proving that the most powerful magic in any world, in any lifetime, in any universe, is the decision two hearts make to become one. A final reflection if their story touched something in you, if you felt the ache of longing, the triumph of love, the possibility of redemption, then you've understood what matters most. We all have shadows. We all carry curses from our past, wounds that seem too deep to heal, fears that feel too strong to face. But love, true, deep, committed love, has the power to transform even our darkest moments into something beautiful. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives meaning to it. It doesn't remove the scars, but it shows us that scars are proof we survived, that we're still here, still fighting, still capable of joy. The Shadow King and the Lunar Princess teach us that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love, that our darkness doesn't disqualify us from deserving light, that choosing each other every day through every challenge is the real magic. So carry their story with you. Remember it when your own darkness feels overwhelming. Remember it when you wonder if you're worthy of love. Remember it when you need proof that transformation is possible. And if you want more stories like this, stories of love and magic, of darkness and redemption, of souls finding each other against all odds, subscribe to this channel. Join our community of dreamers and believers. Leave a comment telling us what moved you, what spoke to your heart, what reminded you that love is always worth fighting for. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment. They're reminders, promises. Proof that no matter how dark the night, no matter how impossible the curse, love will always find a way. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Thank you for believing in the power of love. Thank you for being part of our Moonlit family. Until the next story, keep dancing with your shadows. Keep honoring your light. And most of all, keep believing in the magic of love. The moon is always watching, and destiny is always listening. The end ... and the beginning.